Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is an entitled People's Story. Growing up, my family's orchard had always been a source of pride for us. The trees had been planted over 100 years ago by my grandparents and had been passed down from generation to generation. The fruit was the best in the area, and we always made sure to use every last bit of it, whether that meant making jams or selling it at the local farmer's market. As we grew older, my siblings and I took on more responsibility for maintaining the orchard. We learned the value of hard work and the importance of preserving our family's legacy. But when our neighbor Karen moved in, we had no idea that she would become our worst enemy. At first, Karen seemed pleasant enough. She was friendly and outgoing, and we thought we had made a new friend. But as time went on, we began to see a darker side of her personality. She was constantly complaining about one thing or another, and she seemed to take pleasure in making our lives difficult. Her complaints started small, like the fact that the leaves from our trees were falling onto her property. We tried to be accommodating and rake the leaves as often as we could, but it was a losing battle. Karen seemed to take it as a personal affront, and her complaints only grew more frequent and more aggressive. One day, Karen showed up at our doorstep with a demand. She wanted us to remove an old building that was partially on her land. The building had been there for as long as we could remember, and we had always used it to store our equipment and make jam. We tried to explain to Karen that we couldn't just tear it down, but she wouldn't listen. She threatened to sue us if we didn't comply with her demands. We were at a loss. We didn't want to lose the building, but we couldn't afford a lawsuit either. That was when we discovered that Karen was a member of the homeowners associations in our neighborhood. We had never paid much attention to the homeowners associations before, but we quickly learned that they had a lot of power over our property. Karen had been using her influence in the homeowners associations to try and force us out of the neighborhood. She had convinced several of our other neighbors to file complaints against us, and she had even gone so far as to hire a lawyer to try and force us to sell our land. We were devastated. Our family's legacy was under attack, and we didn't know what to do. But we refused to give up without a fight. We hired our own lawyer and started to fight back. We attended every homeowners association's meeting, and we made sure to document every interaction we had with Karen and the other neighbors. We also started to reach out to other members of the community and rally support for our cause. Karen started to escalate her attacks on our property. Trees that were closest to Karen's property started to get sick and die, and we found strange holes drilled into the trunks. We suspected Karen was behind it, but we couldn't prove it. Unfortunately, our troubles were far from over. Karen was furious about the fines and the attention she was getting from the town. She started to escalate her attacks on our property. Trees that were closest to Karen's property started to get sick and die, and we found strange holes drilled into the trunks. We suspected Karen was behind it, but we couldn't prove it. Then some of our jam went missing, and we had to put a lock on the building's door to stop the theft. But the worst was yet to come. One day we returned from town to find that the old building had been demolished, and a garage was being built in its place. It was clear that Karen had no regard for our family's history, and was intent on taking over our land. I was furious, and I knew I had to take action. After doing some research, I discovered that Karen had not obtained the necessary permits to demolish the building and build the garage. I reported her to the town, and she was hit with over $200,000 worth of fines. But that wasn't all. I had installed cameras around the property, and they caught Karen in the act of damaging our trees. She was hit with another fine for destruction of private property, and finally, it turned out that Karen had built her garage over the property line, and most of it was on our land. We filed for a permit to have the garage destroyed, and Karen was forced to pay for the demolition. She had thought she could bully us and take over our land, but she learned the hard way that she was not above the law. Justice had prevailed, and our family's farm was safe once again. But our troubles were not over yet. Karen was still a member of the homeowners associations, and she had convinced several other members to vote against us in an upcoming election. If she succeeded, she would have even more power over our property. We knew we had to do something to stop her. We started to campaign tirelessly, reaching out to every member of the homeowners associations and explaining our side of the story. We even went door to door, talking to our neighbors and asking for their support. Finally, the day of the election arrived. We were nervous, but we had done everything we could to win. As the votes were counted, it became clear that we had won by a narrow margin. We were overjoyed. We had beaten Karen at her own game, and we had protected our family's legacy. Update. Since the incident, Karen has moved away from our neighborhood and a new family has moved into her old house. We have since become good friends with our new neighbors, and they have even offered to help us with the harvest season. We are grateful for their kindness and happy to see that our orchard continues to thrive. As for Karen, we have not heard from her since she left, but we have heard rumors that she has been banned from the homeowners associations and is facing legal trouble for her actions against us. It's a shame that things had to end this way, but we are happy to see that justice was served. We have also taken steps to protect our property in the future. We have installed a security system and have made sure to document every interaction we have with our neighbors. We never want to go through something like this again, but we are confident that we can handle anything that comes our way. Our family's farm is our legacy, and we will do everything in our power to protect it. The next one is a pro-revenge story. We received a call to a house where a bariatric patient had fallen. The patient was morbidly obese and weighed around 30 stone, 420 pounds. However, this story is not about the patient. There are many reasons people reach this size, and I have never judged, only helped. The problem here was a really arrogant neighbor we had encountered before, and boy was this chap a judgmental moron. Our patient had a car and a disabled parking permit. They also had a council-designated disabled parking spot outside their home, which the neighbor kept parking in. There had been several letters from the council regarding this, and several parking fines served only to annoy this chap even more. On the day of the story, I took the call that the patient had fallen, and we went to the house. Sure enough, the neighbor was not only parked in the disabled spot, but had also parked a second car, blocking access to the patient's driveway. I assessed the patient and suspected they had a broken hip and needed to go inside. I sent my colleague to the neighbor to ask them to move the cars. When they came back, I was told that the neighbor had just told my colleague to do one. No problem, time to get the message home. I radioed our control center and asked for the fire service and police. We needed the fire service to help lift the guy and the police to do a little parking control. The fire service was the first to arrive, and I spoke to the crew commander to let them know what the situation was. A firefighter went to the house to ask the neighbor to move the car and was told the same thing as my colleague. The message was relayed back, and the watch commander just asked me one question. Is the patient's life at risk? I knew exactly where this was going, and it was time our thoughtless neighbor got the message. My answer was, yes, there is equipment I need to get into the house, and the driveway is blocked, preventing me from doing so. The watch commander told the fire truck driver to move those vehicles. It was really satisfying to see both vehicles being pushed down the road by the fire service, and the look on the neighbor's face as he came out spitting and screaming was well worth seeing. His complaints to the police fell on deaf ears. They were well aware of his history of obstruction, and my clinical assessment that the patient's life was in danger was more than enough justification for the vehicles to be moved. I doubt it made our patient's life any easier, and sadly they died a few months later without leaving the hospital, but it really did bring a smile to their face as we wheeled them out. The next one is a petty revenge story. I had a problem neighbor for so many years. He terrorized the area. He was a drug addict and dealer, which is his business, but don't make it my issue. Thus, we always had unsavory people popping up, breaking into houses, cars, stealing packages, etc. I know it's to do with him because he had previously admitted that it was his friends doing it, and I've seen CCTV footage from other neighbors showing his friends damaging cars, etc. He has stolen bank cards that came in the mail, makes the most obnoxious amount of noise that wakes me up, and his friends, fiends, almost always ring my bell in the dead of night, around 2:30 a.m. I've shouted at them so many times and have argued with him too. My neighbor has also been in prison multiple times for various things, including very serious crimes, so he would do well to keep his head low as a free man, you'd think. We live in a house converted into apartments, where there are 4 apartments and a main area downstairs to walk through where mail goes. He always leaves the main door open, which I'd ask him not to, so his friends can come and go. Sometimes they'd kick the door down and trash the area. Whenever I'd get a package and I wasn't home, The delivery person would leave the package unattended in the front garden or the main area outside my door, despite me instructing them not to. My package would be stolen by my neighbor/his friends in seconds. This went on for years, and when confronted, he'd deny it. But I knew it was him. Other two apartments are old people who I'm friendly with, who also dislike him. The issue is I never had any proof. I once called the police after he wrote a note to me apologizing for his friend stealing my package, but that went nowhere. This time I wasn't going to let my over pound 250 worth of stolen packages go amiss. I put up a camera in the main area. I saved the boxes from some other packages, placed an apple and some plastic bags in there for weight, set them outside, and within 5 minutes they were stolen by his friend who hadn't seen the camera. Gotcha! I called the police, who commended me on my setup skills, and they came over, but by the time they did, the guy had left the building, with packed bags that were definitely filled with drugs to sell. They told me they'd look out for him. A few weeks later, I get a call from the police about it. I also tell them I'm absolutely certain he sells Class A drugs and has been terrorizing the area. They tell me they'd pay me a visit. 5 days go by, and at 7 a.m. I get a call from the same officer asking me to open the door quickly and quietly. I do, and she tells me to go inside, but not before I see about 15 plain-clothed officers hiding behind a wall. I look through the peephole, and they all storm inside, boot down his door, and arrest everyone inside. It was basically a crack house, as well as seize boxes of drugs. This was all caught on the camera I bought, so I sent the footage to the landlord. The police also get in touch with the landlord, and thus my neighbor is evicted on top of it. This was a month ago. None of his mail has been picked up, and I'm getting a lot of joy out of this. Moral of the story? Keep your hands to yourself. The next one is an entitled People Story. I like fresh ground pepper. My wife likes fresh ground pepper. My friends like fresh ground pepper. I particularly like it on my weekly Sunday breakfast, which, as it happens, takes place in the same local neighborhood diner as it has for 10 years. Alas, this diner deploys simple pepper shakers, inadequate for our tastes, so we bring along our own purse-sized mill. This diner, I should further point out, is generally patronized by regulars each Sunday morning, and we are on a smile and wave basis with most of them. As usual, this past Sunday, we were enjoying our breakfast, talking, laughing over stupid jokes. The usual. At the table to our immediate right was a couple about mid-50s, same as us, but unfamiliar to us, not regulars, and the man had a loud voice, so loud in fact that he made our conversation a little difficult. During a lull in our conversation, I heard him say, "Pass the pepper." My friends then mentioned that they were going for a bike ride later and wondered if we'd like to join them. I thought it over, and just as I was about to answer, I heard a scraping of a chair from the next table. Suddenly, the man with the loud voice was looming over our table. "I said pass the pepper, goddammit!" he barked, and reached across the table to grab my pepper mill. A cacophony of protests, surprise, queries, and exclamations followed. I managed to block his hand and looked up at him. "Hey, what are you doing?" I demanded. My friend, a very mild-mannered and gentle man, jumped to his feet and squared up. "Pass the pepper," the man snarled again. "What is so hard to understand?" I quickly slid the pepper mill off the table and into my pocket. Then I, too, stood up. "The pepper?" I asked. "You mean my pepper? That isn't the communal pepper." "What the hell is wrong with you?" he shouted. "I want the goddamn pepper!" At this point, his wife/girlfriend/companion, quicker on the uptake, realized his mistake and tried to get his attention. Roy, sit down, it's not Roy. Listen," she tried, but Roy, doubling down and in high dudgeon, was not to be denied. "Get that ducking pepper out of your pocket and hand it over now." Eyes were uncomfortably on us. Other tables were watching this play out in surprise and shock. At this point, a server approached with her arms full of someone else's breakfast. "Hey guys, not sure what's going on, but I have hot food here. Coming through." As she passed, Roy shouted again, and this time threw his hands in the air in a "what the hell" gesture. It all happened in a blur, and before the server could dodge, she was covered in sunny-side-up eggs, home fries, and sausage. "Roy!" the woman screamed. "What the hell? Hey, watch out! Oh no!" And a dozen other exclamations from the onlookers erupted all at once. "Duck!" Roy shouted. "See what you ducking did?" His wife had scrambled to her feet to assist the server, who dropped the second plate as well. My wife also got up to help, and the owner, Donna, a sweet-faced 65-year-old, suddenly emerged from the kitchen. "What is going on?" she said, alarmed. Everyone started talking at once, and Alpha Roy, shouted over everyone. "This a hole indicating me wouldn't pass me the pepper," he roared. Donna gaped uncomprehendingly at him for a moment. She looked at the mess on the floor, the now red-faced and furious Roy, the other customers, and then at me. "He what? There's pepper on your table?" "Roy!" his wife screamed again. "Apologize now and sit down." "It's my pepper mill," I said again, "not the restaurant's." "Ducking, idiot," Roy shouted. "Why didn't you say something, a-hole?" I laughed out loud and looked with amazed surprise at my friend. He stared straight at Roy and said in a quiet but firm voice, "Listen to your wife and sit down." Donna looked around at the mess and confusion. At this point, approximately 45 seconds had elapsed since Roy first lurched to his feet to steal my pepper. "I think I'm going to have to ask you to leave," she said to Roy. "I can't have this in my restaurant." Roy's wife, nearly in tears, began apologizing rapidly and repeatedly. Roy started protesting and demanding that he get to eat his breakfast. Donna, sweet-faced but tough, told him he could leave voluntarily, or she would have the police assist him. "Roy, now!" his wife said. She left a wad of money on the table and grabbed his arm, pulling him to the door. "I am so sorry," she said to Donna and the server. "I guess he loves his pepper too." The next one is an entitled Parents Story. It feels gaudy to post again so soon. In my last post, I mentioned that my mom miscarried in her recent pregnancy after a bad fall. Something didn't smell right about the information I got after all the comments I received about it. So I decided the only way I was going to get the truth was to go straight to the horse's mouth. So I went to see my parents on Sunday. They were both home and resting. They both looked like hell, too. My mom, aside from needing crutches to walk more than a few feet, had a lot of marks and bandages all over her face from that fall she took. And my dad, well, just see his description after the beating I gave him in my last post to see how he looked. My parents were beyond shocked I showed up, and I demanded to know if there ever really was a baby, or if it was all just some half-assed plan to guilt me for not coming home. My dad said I had a lot of nerve showing up and just letting myself in after what happened. But my mom broke down in sobs and said she really had been pregnant. She lurched into the bedroom and retrieved a small but kinda ornate-looking urn, and it had ashes inside it. I even checked to see if they looked or smelled like ashes from cigarettes or a barbecue or something, but they didn't smell anything like that. In fact, I barely smelled anything at all. I asked why they brought home the urn claiming the ashes were in it before. I checked online and it said 7 to 10 days at least to get ashes back. And Mom was in the hospital no more than 5 days. My mom said they bought the urn online and expected to get the baby's ashes back when they went to the crematorium, and were really upset they couldn't bring the baby home yet, so they just waited until they could get the ashes a few days later, and then went out to get drunk. Mom claimed the crematorium did things a little quicker because she begged them. There were genuine tears in her eyes. I've seen her crocodile tears many times, but this didn't look like that. I got more information as to what happened about how my mom fell. She was running late to see her doctor, an OB-GYN or whatever they call them. Mom explained that she overslept while taking a nap and was trying to hurry out to make her appointment. Then she slipped on a toy while trying to get down the steps. The guardrails for the porch had rotted and broken off like 2 years ago, and Dad never fixed or replaced them. So my mom had nothing to grab onto in order to stop her fall. And down she went right off the porch and landed face and then belly into the ground. She even showed me marks all over her stomach from where she landed. She told me the baby would have been another boy. I've got 2 brothers and 2 sisters, and there would have been 1 more brother. Then Mom told me that a doctor warned her against ever trying to have another baby because her body might not be able to handle it again due to her age and prior injuries. I kind of figured that was the case after some things people messaged me about it, but it didn't make it any easier to hear in person. Finally, I asked the big question, why did she blame me? Mom started to say that day they showed up at my apartment was just really bad or something like that, but Dad finally spoke up and interrupted her. He yelled that it's because it was all my fault. If I'd done like he said and moved back home at Thanksgiving, then I would have been there to help. And now a baby is dead because of me. I yelled at him that if he'd actually bothered to fix the damn porch, then Mom might not have ever fallen, and that's on him. Plus, he didn't even bother to tell me Mom was pregnant back at Thanksgiving. Not that it would have changed anything. We continued yelling at each other, and rather than side with anyone, my mom just left the room crying. My dad looked like a lit match from how red he was, and he brandished his old hunting knife at me while yelling to get out of his house. As I was leaving, he said I was no longer his son. I told him that I hadn't seen him as a father in years because he was always a terrible dad. But before I went out the door, I said to him that I'd be filing for a restraining order, and if he ever lays a hand on my siblings like he tried to do with me, then next time he'll lose more than a couple of teeth. And I won't hesitate to call the police or CPS if he tries the same crap with my siblings as he did with me. He yelled plenty of insults at me from the front door like, "You son of a idiot!" I said back that was an insult to Mom, and he got red in the face again. Then I gave him a one-finger salute before riding away on my mountain bike. So yeah, I guess that's as good of an answer as I have for anyone. If this isn't the truth, then I don't know what is. But does it matter anymore? I'm filing for a restraining order as soon as I can, and I'll be looking to move apartments after I start bringing in money from my new job. I don't know if I'll feel like updating again after this. I'm just going to be depressed remembering all this. So I think I may be done here, unless my parents decide to do something bad to my siblings. But hopefully I've gotten my point across to them. I've already beaten Dad up twice, and he still looked somewhat afraid of me while clutching that knife. It felt like he was looking at a monster. Maybe I am in his eyes. But if my being a monster to him means he never hurts my siblings, then that's fine. I'll be the monster. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already.